Alrighty, everybody, we are live. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are very excited for this webinar. My name is Beau Freeman. I work on the marketing team over at KMicro. Joined today by Ian Hanley. Ian, do you want to give a quick intro of who you are and what you do over at KMicro?
Yeah, sure. So good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. My name is Ian Hanley. I'm a Microsoft security architect at KMicro. What that means is I get to build cool stuff, and that's just how I like it. I'm also a girl dad, so I know a thing or two about risk management as well. Back to you, Beau.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. We are in for a real treat. Ian is extremely intelligent Microsoft security architect, so we're happy to have him today. Today for this webinar, we're talking about protecting credit union member trust. Obviously, that's the title of the webinar today. Before we dive in, I want to take care of some housekeeping items, give you a brief agenda of what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll jump right into the content. So first and foremost, we're going to take care of some housekeeping. Then we're going to talk a little bit about who KMicro is. We'll talk about member trust, kind of what that means. Then we'll talk about some of those threats that exist to member trust. We'll talk about the NCUA risk alerts, and then we'll talk about the multi-layered security and some other, smaller things to wrap up at the end. So that's what we are doing today. So let's do the housekeeping. Let's do the boring stuff. You're gonna have to listen to me talk for a little bit. I apologize. So first and foremost, want to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded. So we are recording this webinar. We will then upload it to our YouTube channel, and we'll send that link out to everybody that attended here. So if you need to step out or you had a coworker that wasn't able to attend today, you can forward that YouTube link onto them. Next piece of housekeeping items is, you took time out of your busy schedule today. We want this to be a valuable experience. And so what we'll encourage today is some participation. So we want you to participate, and we want you to do that through the chat section. So you can find the chat, the little bubble there. That's where you can access the chat. And I want to do a little exercise to help us help everybody find the chat and put some information in there. So first thing, in the chat, drop your name, let us know where you're calling in from, and then humor me a little bit on this exercise. The holiday season is just right around the corner. I want to hear if there's a gift that you're excited to potentially give or potentially receive this Christmas season. So while you're getting your thoughts together, a little bit about me. I'm Beau. I'm based in Utah, and I have a 4-year-old daughter. She's very into arts and crafts. She's leaving colored pencils, crayons all over the place. So we're getting her a cool little craft table to put in her room where we can organize all those crayons, colored pencils, kind of bring some chaos into that. So yeah, we want to give a shout out to some of the people here. Ian, if I just realized if I click the chat, I will lose teams. Do you by chance want to see if there's people dropping in the chat and maybe give a couple shout outs if possible?
Well, I don't see a whole lot right now, but I know I'm excited to give Super Mario themed Legos to my girls, and I'm excited to receive just as equally as much slippers so I don't step on those things when I'm coming downstairs.
Beautiful. It looks like Tara just chimed in too. Tara is calling in from Washington, D.C., and she's excited for her trip to London. That's pretty awesome, Tara. Great to have you here. It looks like Lauren is calling in from California. Lauren, awesome that you're here, and she's excited for sleep this Christmas. What did Dylan say there?
Looks like everybody wants rest. Dylan's excited to see his daughter's Lego set and make up. And make it up. They're in Charlotte. We've got somebody else from Chicago looking for rest. Sunny California. Yeah, rub it in, right? And then Toronto +1 on the Legos. We got a lot of good stuff in here.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, guys. Thank you for humoring us with that little exercise. Once again, that's your chat. You drop those questions in there. We will do our absolute best to answer every question. There may be a question we can't answer, or there may be questions we don't have time to get to. We do also have some of our fantastic security team in the background answering some of those questions as well. So once again, engage with us, make this engaging. This webinar is for you. We want this time to be valuable. I've got one last piece of housekeeping for us. We're going to launch some poll questions throughout this webinar. The poll questions serve to help us understand you a little bit better so that we can tailor our content to your specific needs and understand how we can serve you at KMicro. So before we get started, let's launch our first poll question. It's loading, sorry, everybody. Okay, so we're looking at, so first poll question here. We're talking about protecting member security. We want to understand what you're currently using today. What are you using to protect member trust? And we've got Microsoft on there. We've got a list of other kind of solutions. So let us know which ones you're using. If you aren't using any of the individuals or the services that we put in on that list, go ahead and select other and drop that in the chat. So I'll give you guys another 20 seconds here to get your responses in. All righty. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you guys so much for participating in that poll question. Like I said, it just helps us serve you guys a little bit better. And one of the things we saw in there is Microsoft. And so that will help us transition into our next slide here and talking a little bit about KMicro. So hopefully some of you know who we are. I know there's some of you that may not know who we are. And we want to just kind of give a brief introduction about who we are and what we do. And at KMicro, we are a multi-discipline Microsoft partner. We absolutely love Microsoft. We are a member of MISA, the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association. That's a pretty exclusive group. There's not a lot of members of MISA, and we're one of them. So it really demonstrates our expertise and our skill set when it comes to protecting organizations. We're also a security solutions partner. So a lot of security designations over there with Microsoft, but not just that. Like I said, we're a multi-discipline. So we also are a solutions partner for business applications as well as modern work. And what that really does for us over at KMicro, it uniquely positions us to be able to serve our customers in the way that they need to be served, right? It enables us to provide a tailored experience because we have that depth of knowledge across the Microsoft technology. We're not just doing things in silos, right? It gives us a better picture and how we can serve you best. So that's a little bit about KMicro. And as you can see, we're very family oriented. You already know that I have a daughter, Ian has daughters. Right? We're very focused on family. And that's not just an approach we take internally. We are family to our partners. And once again, when you're family, we're working together to serve you the best that we possibly can. Ian, anything I missed there on KMicro that you might want to add?
Sorry, I got to unmute there. No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, Beau. We're a seamless, we seamlessly blend cutting edge Microsoft business applications and technology prowess, yada, yada, the elevator pitch. From strategic advisors to end-to-end execution, we ignite transformation. So we're here to help you bridge the gap, whatever it might be.
Absolutely, Bridget. And we want to handle the business technology so you guys can go and focus on what you do best. So that's a little bit about us. Now let's jump in. Let's jump into the meat of this presentation here. I really love this statement. It may seem trivial, or you may be like, yeah, well, duh, but your members trust you. That's why they bank with you. And I think that's really impactful, right? That trust stems from a lot of different places. You may live, in the communities in which you work. Your kids may play sports together. They may go to school, right? There's so many things when it comes to credit unions that build that trust with your members. And so we wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into what member trust means. So we went out and we did some research. We found some studies, some stats on a few different research studies that kind of gauge the how consumers feel about their financial institutions. So this first study that we found, it says that 75% of respondents believe that their bank holds the ultimate responsibility for protecting against cybercrime and fraud, right? So when we're talking trust, when you say your members trust you, it means, hey, I trust that in the background, my credit union is doing everything that they need to be doing to ensure that we are protected against cybercrime and fraud. Next study here, very similar. 83% of respondents said that they're confident in their bank's security. 50% said they would like some additional security measures. But just again, to reiterate that point, when a member comes and they open a bank account with you or they take out a loan with you, there's either consciously or subconsciously saying, hey, I know these guys have got my back. I know that they're doing what they need to be doing in the background to protect me. And I'm confident that my assets and my livelihood are protected. And Ian, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about this last statistic we found.
Yeah, this is my favorite one. So being in the security industry, I hate it when I see, hey, security is just a cost center, right? That's not necessarily the case. 55% or more than half of potential members shopping around for credit unions to join value that as a differentiator. So what this is telling me is this is how you differentiate yourself out from the rest and how you stand out and deliver that added value to your members. I know I'm personally a member of Elevation's Credit Union up in Colorado. I don't even live in Colorado anymore, and I'm never leaving him. Anyway, back to you, Beau.
That trust is deep, right? That trust in that relationship, they're so deep. I love it, Ian. There are the links to the research that we found. If you're interested in getting these links and want to discover that further, you can shoot me an email. My email is just the letter B and then Freeman, Freeman at KMicro.com. If you want any of those links, feel free to reach out and I will get you the links. So we've established member trust. Your members trust you. What does that mean in terms of cybersecurity? Now we want to kind of look at some of those threats that exist today to that member trust. So Ian, I will turn it over to you.
So the first thing I want to talk about is what kind of attack surface area do credit unions typically have to deal with? And I have a list right here. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Your network infrastructure, everyone knows that's the backbone of your organization. You can't function without it. You need that connectivity. And then your endpoints, that's what your tellers need to be able to access and do their job. They need access to their endpoint, their computer, their teller computer. It needs to be locked down and it needs to be protected and secured. Web applications, this is one of the reasons I'm never leaving my credit union, is because I've done a test. I run Graphene OS, which is not the typical Android or iOS. It's a different type forked from Android, and it's security based. So I had to turn off a lot of my security restrictions or protections in order to get, for example, Capital One's banking app to work. I don't have to do that with my Elevations Credit Union app. So web applications are a big deal in the customer or member facing aspect of your trust that is super important for protecting, but you guys already know that. And then email systems. This is a huge one as well, because business email compromise, or BEC, has become the most prevalent entry point for most of the attacks that we've seen in the wild out there. And when I say business email compromise, people say, oh yeah, I know better than to click on the Nigerian prince scam, right? It's gone a little bit more complicated than that. Nowadays, or it went from that to script kiddies using buying a domain that is Microsoft spelled funny, or with zeros instead of O's, or a 1 instead of an I. So it looks like it's Microsoft when they send you that support message asking for your credentials. People are seeing past that too. However, with the advent of AI and additional sophistication tools that are in the wild out there right now, it's bananas. What's happening and what we're seeing more and more often is somebody down the supply chain is emailing you. So somebody that you already do business with or expect an email from, that's who the phishing email is going to come from. I've seen more and more cases where a third-party vendor down the supply chain has been compromised through some sort of BEC attack, and that's where the next step comes into attacking you. And it's much more believable and harder to miss that way. I don't want to scare you guys. I'm focusing on just the big attack surface areas here that we think are important based on what we've seen. And then your third-party vendors, that leads us right into that. Business email compromise attacks tend to combine themselves with third-party supply chain vendor attacks because they want to attack you from there, from a trusted source. And then your internal systems, you guys all know you can't run old versions of TLS encryption anymore, et cetera, or you'll fail your audits, right? Banking applications like Fiserv and a couple of those that we've worked with tend to have requirements for older TLS just because their devs quite haven't fixed or patched their software up yet. So these are the kind of things that go into your internal systems. And then physical security. You guys typically, or any bank I've ever been to, typically has that one on lock. There's two sets of doors and they both lock. So you guys are doing that one great. But did you know much about the rest of the attack surface areas? That's what we're banking on protecting, that usually where we see some sort of a gap that we can help out with. Back to you, Beau.
Yeah, great stuff, Ian. So, Ian just kind of went through the attack surface and what it looks like. We want to launch a poll question here for you guys. So based off the slide and what Ian just talked about, in your organizations, your credit unions, which attack surface area are you finding the most difficult to secure? Is it the infrastructure, the endpoints, the applications? Which one? And you can select multiple answers here. So if there's, you're saying, hey, these are both really difficult, you can select both of those. And I'll just give you guys, 20 seconds here to get the poll responses in. All righty. Okay. Thank you guys so much for your participation in the poll questions. All right, and let's continue here. We're talking about the attack surface. Now let's look at some of the, you might say a little bit more scary stuff.
Yeah. So what happens if somebody drops the ball on that attack surface area and something gets exploited? Here are some of the different things and the consequences that we've seen in environments out there in the wild that we want to talk about. And this is going to sound kind of like out of a movie in some parts, but I promise you this is stuff that we've seen and we can back it up. So the first thing that we typically see is CRM data, customer data, relationship data, that kind of thing. Once you've got access to the system from a threat actor's perspective, that's where the money is. So we want to extract as much of that as we can before we try to kick off an encryption algorithm. The reason that there's two steps to this is because it used to be simple ransomware. Now we've got things like double, triple, and quadruple extortion. Double extortion is where you have to pay to get the decryption key back so you can unencrypt your data. Then you have to pay them a separate fee to prevent them from leaking the data that they made off with and finding yourself on the dark web of shame. That the dark web, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is decentralized. So when something is on the dark web, it does not come down. That's a huge part of your reputation and member trust that we're really focusing on here. On to the next one. Don't worry, guys, we got a lot of fun stuff. So Power Automate flows. This one's really fun because it leverages kind of a logic app type of logic, right? So what it's doing is, say a user, this ties back to insider risk. Say a user knows they're going to quit and they're not happy about it, or they found out they're going to get canned and they're not happy about it. Either way, this is the stage for some malicious activity. That user has access while they're a member of your organization. They don't when they're gone. So what they can do is, if they have the correct access, they can create a system of logic or a Power Automate flow to automate deleting or tampering with data long after they've left, kind of like a time bomb that they've left afterwards. It's kind of a low blow, but these are the kind of things you got to watch out for. Oftentimes you don't expect it from an insider, but oftentimes that's where it comes from because it gets overlooked. On to the next one, please. Okay, this one sounds simple. Like, who changes bank account numbers and makes off with the money and thinks they can get away with it anymore, right? This isn't like a 30s bank heist sort of deal with Tommy guns out the window. But it is just as serious and sounding of a movie, or reminiscent of a movie. Think Ocean's 11 here or something crazy. In the past, well, here's how this works. You're thinking, how do they somehow change bank account numbers, right? Some guy out of Lithuania duped in the last decade Google and Facebook by simply doing a BEC attack, business email compromise, impersonating a third-party supply chain vendor to Facebook and Google, saying, hey, you guys need to redirect your accounts payable details to these details. And he had spun up a bunch of shell companies all around the world to funnel the money back. When you're thinking companies such as Google and Facebook, their third-party vendors are invoicing them for millions, if not billions, every couple of months. So this guy made off with millions over the course of a couple of years. They're still trying to recover the funds. So even though it sounds kind of crazy, like, who's going to change numbers and just make off with money and not think they can get caught? Trust us, it happens more often than you think. Anyway, the most terrifying one, if that all didn't sound bad enough, this last one here is one of my favorites. It's so member trust and reputation and your trust is at stake on this one. And this is a really bad one because this isn't monetarily motivated. This is just wanting to hurt somebody. So what this is, say somebody gets access, if account numbers are wrong, users can't access their data. Maybe the money's not necessarily there, or it's in someone else's account. Data integrity is directly indicative of your trust with your members. So that's why this one is particularly scary, in my opinion. However, that concludes our fear, uncertainty, and doubt slide. It sounds like I'm here to tell you everything is on fire. What do we do? Beau's here to tell you that we've got the fire extinguisher, ladder number 9, National Guard, you name it, we're on call, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I appreciate you going through those examples, Ian. And yeah, we don't necessarily want you to feel like the house is on fire. We've got things to help. But before we kind of move on to that, I just want to take a second and as the marketing guy, as Ian's going through all of these kind of situations, it sometimes does feel like a movie, right? Like some crazy futuristic movie that, like, what in the world? There's no way that kind of stuff is going on. But as Ian said, it is happening. And so I wanted to take a second for all of you that are working in cybersecurity, protecting your members' assets and livelihood. Just amazing job. You guys are modern day superheroes fighting the bad guys, and you do an incredible job. And I don't know how you balance all of the things that you have to do. Many times, a lot of you aren't only in cybersecurity. You have other things you have to do, and so it's really incredible that you're able to kind of manage all of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about our MXDR offering later on in the presentation. But if you were to look at this and just be like, holy smokes, the rate at which these threats are evolving is just too much for me. The frequency at which they're happening, I can't stay on top of it. We don't have the resources. I don't have the bandwidth. if you're in a situation like that, our MXDR offering is a perfect solution. It's just kind of one where we can come in and manage that for you. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but wanted to give you guys your figurative round of applause and tell you you're amazing. Keep up the great work. You're protecting families. You're protecting their livelihood. It's incredible. So going back to Ian's little analogy there, the house may be on fire, but we've got solutions. And this, if we stick with that same analogy, maybe this is the fire extinguisher, and that's NCUA risk alerts. And I would assume a lot of you are familiar with the NCUA. The NCUA is that kind of governing body that helps protect credit unions. And what they'll do is they'll issue risk alerts, and they do it relatively frequently. You can find them online. They've got a list. You can go through all of the alerts that they've listed and published and kind of go and read through those. But inside of those risk alerts, you're going to find an alert. Obviously, they're going to say, hey, this is what's happening. These are the potential threats. This is what you need to be on the lookout for. They'll provide some mitigation strategies. Hey, you need to do this. You need to make sure you have this in place. Make sure that you're, doing this. They'll encourage reporting. So kind of make it easy for you to report any suspicious activity, to let them know what's going on. And then there's some other, ways that they can help support with compliance. Fantastic. We love the NCUA. It's amazing that they exist. It's amazing, like I was saying, with the sophistication and the frequency of these attacks just increasing exponentially. It's incredible to have somebody, in having your back to help you with this. But there are some drawbacks. The NCUA is not going to come in and deploy everything for you, right? They're not going to set it up. They're not going to, rubber meets the road. They're not going to be the ones doing that. And so that's where, at KMicro, we recently had an experience with a credit union. Obviously, we're not going to divulge too much information, but we helped a credit union that was, faced with an NCUA risk alert. And so, Ian, do you want to talk a little bit about that? How you helped that organization?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to. That brings us to our next slide. Thank you. The NCUA risk alerts, they're fantastic. They're really helpful. However, they don't meet the road, right? The rubber doesn't really get there. They tell you what you should do. And a lot of you may be thinking, hey, right? That makes sense. However, doing it is a totally different ball game. So here are some of the things. Let me give you an example. Establishing an internal and external communication protocol. So we know who the stakeholders are, how to get them, and when to get them. And insurance considerations. This is another thing that gets overlooked often. Pretty much, I think, FDIC guys are required to have some sort of insurance. So there are certain things that you have to, like T's you have to cross, I's you have to dot in order to get that payout should something happen. So we want to make sure we cover ground zero there. And then we look at incident response team. We're your incident response team over at KMicro. And then once we get that access, what we do is we'll run some tabletop exercises. This is my particularly favorite part, where we'll identify the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are associated with your NCUA risk alert or advisory. And we can aggressively harden and tailor your security posture against that specific risk. However, like I said earlier, the NCUA are going to tell you to do this. They're not going to actually log into your system and get you there. That's where we cover the gap.
So Ian, going back to kind of this experience that you just recently had, I'm going to move us forward here to the next slide. So talk me through that. I believe that you and your team were brought in on a Friday afternoon, worked through the weekend to get that done. Tell me about the solution that you provided for them. Just walk me through a little bit more of the details on how we helped our most recent credit union.
Absolutely. So the first thing is we're all nerds here at KMicro, right? So when we see a threat alert come in, we get kind of excited, right? It's not necessarily great news but this is kind of something that we get excited about. So the first thing we want to do is, this ties back to some of the NCUA risk alerts that we talked on the last page. Do you have the bandwidth and the skill set, and can you operate under the time frame? We received a call at about 6:30 on a Friday. And nobody waits until, threat actors don't wait until Monday morning at 8 a.m. when everybody's fresh and ready from a weekend and rested. They wait until about 6:30 on a Friday night to kick off their attack after all the IT team has gone home. So that's what we're here for. We're ready to rock and roll Fridays through the weekend. And we have the right skill set. That's another big thing. Just about anybody could hop in and SOC and kind of look around, but you need Microsoft certified engineers to try and do the advanced hunting and try to identify indicators of compromise and deploy those correctly.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to hopefully not embarrass Ian a little too much, but I'm going to talk about him just to kind of illustrate a point on, the caliber of individual that we bring on over here at KMicro. So Ian in particular, Ian's currently working with a publisher to write a book on cybersecurity. He's also nominated as an MVP over at Microsoft. And he's done countless other things that my brain can't even comprehend, right? He is a very skilled individual. And that's what we bring at KMicro, right? When you approach us because you've got an NCUA risk alert and you know your team doesn't have the bandwidth, right? You may not even have the team with the skill set to do what you need to do, and you can't get it done in the tight time frame. KMicro is absolutely a place that can help you. And we're going to talk more about this later on in the presentation, but we build tailored solutions, right? So we're not going to just come in there and, hey, you have this NCUA risk alert. Oh, we're going to throw this service at it. No, we're really going to take the time. And I believe this is what you did, Ian. You guys really took the time to understand what was happening and built a tailored solution to help them combat that risk. So sorry, Ian, didn't mean to embarrass you, but that's kind of how we operate over here at KMicro. So we're kind of at
appreciate it. Thank you. No, just thanks for the kind words.
Absolutely. Kind of at a transition phase here. Do we have any questions that maybe we should bring up in front of the group? Maybe some of our helpers in the background. Anything you guys see that would be valuable for us to bring up? All right, I'll take silence as a no. Okie dokie. Okay, we're going to transition a little bit here. We're going to launch a poll question. Oh, it looks like a question came in.
How long did it take to resolve? Okay.
Yeah, you want to tackle that?
I also want to look up a little bit. A lot of attacks coming from links hosted by Microsoft ecosystem. A couple other things. So let's go to this one. How long did it take to resolve? So what we were doing was incident preparedness. So we had information that this could happen. So what we did was we tailored it, and then about two and a half weeks later, we saw the threat actor make their move and deliver a payload, and we were able to catch it in the bud, and we have all the logs in Sentinel to back that up. But yeah, it took about 2 weeks after, give or take a couple of days, after we did our part before we actually saw the payload come in. So right in the nick of time.
Remember, trust protected. That's amazing. It's what we love to hear. Great. Okay. I don't know if the poll question is still up for you guys. Do you see it on your end, Ian? Because I launched it and now it's kind of gone for me.
Was it the poll? Yes, that did pop up.
Yes, okay. So poll question, if it's still on your screen,
why do customers choose credit unions, yes. Right? Yeah, that one is there.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we want to understand from your perspective, why are members coming to you guys over, different financial institutions? And that's a multiple choice list. And if we miss something, you say, hey, our members come here because of this, and you want to put that in the chat, feel free to do that. And we'll just give another 15, 20 seconds here to wrap it up.
Yeah, I live in Virginia, and I still bank with my credit union up in Colorado. I'm moving to Kentucky actually next week too, and yeah, sticking with them.
Love it, love it. Relationships. Okay, we will kind of wrap that poll question up and move on to the next section here. All right, so really love this slide. We found this study from McKinsey & Company that talked about, they were really looking at the value that consumers extract from their financial institution. And you can see they kind of compared credit unions, big banks, and then those regional banks. And the point that I really want to point out here and kind of the takeaway is that big, bold statement at the top. So from McKinsey & Company, they found that credit union members get more value out of their relationships with their primary financial institution than bank customers do. So once again, this is Beau giving you another round of applause. You guys are amazing. You build that trust. You provide fantastic relationships. There are no relationships without trust. So you're obviously establishing that trust, and fantastic job. But it can't end there, right? That is a foundation for establishing trust. And we're here to talk about how cybersecurity is a catalyst for maintaining that trust. Cybersecurity ensures that you never lose that member trust. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. And we understand there's a need, for credit unions to have enterprise level security. We understand that you need to have the same level of security that those guys in the middle on this slide have. You need to have that same caliber to protect your organizations. And what we really love at KMicro is, I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we're really integrated with Microsoft. And I think I failed to mention, we're also a CSP, right? So we deal with Microsoft licensing as well. And so because we have, that deep expertise across Microsoft, we're really ingrained with that. We really have worked to optimize costs, right? So we work really hard to provide those enterprise level tools and optimize the costs that are associated with the enterprise level tools. And so Ian, wanted to give you a chance to just maybe speak to that concept of, how we approach optimizing costs for our customers.
Absolutely. There's a ton of different things that we can do. I'm a bit of a cost optimization nerd myself, so I've written plenty of blog articles and contributed to a couple different cost optimization workbooks on GitHub that you can download and put into your Sentinel deployment. Anyway, some of the things that I want to talk about that we do here is just one example is, say you've got a Fortinet firewall or a Palo. Those two are very, very talkative. So from a security perspective, we don't care about the version number, all that other stuff that they send over, the model number. We just care about the timestamp, the severity, and the message. So what that translates to is what happened, how bad was it, and when did it happen? And when you're talking about maybe a Palo or a Fortinet, about 60% of that data outside of those three things we just talked about is superfluous. So if you think about it, when we write the right DCR rules, we can reduce your firewall ingest into Sentinel by about 50 to 60% when you have one of those two brands of firewalls. So this is just one example of how we can reduce or optimize your costs without compromising your security posture. And something else we like to do is focus on right sizing. If you know you're going to spend so many gigabytes based on ingest trends in the next month, then we can get you a particular discount on that based on how much you expect to spend. So we watch trends going up and down closely, and we try to right size accordingly. And something else that's really important too is we're about to talk to you about several different Microsoft XDR pieces that all tie in together. And I want to point out that they are all available under the Microsoft E5 license. So one of the biggest things that we find is people are already paying for these and not leveraging them. So that's another way that we try to bring that added value. It doesn't always make as much sense. Like the most common one that I see is somebody's using Cisco Umbrella, and then I'm doing a Defender for Office workshop or something like that. And they go, wait, this can do this too? We're already paying for it. And it does it just as well in our experience. So these are some of the different ways that we try to maximize your value. And another thing, when you're comparing with things like that, Microsoft tends to do it a little better. I just want to point this out. Everything is under the same ecosystem, right? So if you've got something like Varonis or Cisco Umbrella, you've got a separate agent running in your systray, and it's not necessarily going to have the right kind of telemetry that we're looking for maximizing your security posture. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into our use cases later on in the show. Back to you, Beau.
Awesome. Yeah, Ian, thank you for talking about that. And I think it's just another testament to, we're not just going to, KMicro, we're not throwing one size fits all solutions at you, right? It's, we're taking our expertise, we're leveraging the skill set and the ability that we have across different areas to come in and make it an ideal situation for you. So Ian, love it. Thank you. I will probably talk about cost optimization again. I'll sound like a broken record. I apologize, but let's take a look at some of those enterprise level security tools and what they can really do for credit unions.
Let's hit it. The first one I want to talk about is Defender for Endpoint, and you'll notice a lot of these tie back into your attack surface areas and addressing different aspects of it that we talked about earlier. So Defender for Endpoint, if you recall, is referencing all of your endpoints and how to protect them. So this brings us into zero trust network architecture. So we want to assume breach. So we write all of our policies for all of your equipment to assume what if one gets compromised. That way we limit the blast radius. And that's only achievable through something like Defender for Endpoint that provides that extra insight and governance over your endpoints connecting to your corporate data. Let's go to the next one. I like to say that identity is the new battlefield, especially in 2024 and moving into 2025. The reason for that is the same user can log into multiple devices. So it's the credential or the identity that, in my opinion, weighs more. So you have to protect your devices as well, but the identity can do a lot more damage. When you're logging into a line of business app in a browser, for example, like SharePoint, you don't have to do that from an actual corporate device. It's your username and account that you're logging in with. So identity, I cannot stress this enough, is the new battleground. And then Defender for Identity and Entra ID Conditional Access are two of the big tools that we have for that. Defender for Identity extends the Entra ID or cloud directory security to your on-premises Active Directory. And Entra ID Conditional Access is super powerful because it can say you can set stipulations to where somebody cannot access corporate data unless they have a corporate device that is not behind on security updates. It's up to date on everything else, and it's got this, that, and the other. We can go into various operating system versions, you name it, it gets granular. So if the device satisfies the conditional access pieces, then we can also force the user to satisfy MFA as well before they can hop onto that CRM data in your environment. Pretty powerful stuff. Let's go to the next one. All right, I'm going to harp on this one again. BEC, business email compromise. Like I said before, this is the most prevalent that we've seen attack vector out there when it comes to trying to get initial access. Defender for Office 365 is how you prevent against that. We've got everything from phishing filters, spam filters, threat alerts, all kinds of different policies. And again, I can't stress this enough because this is directly prohibiting the threat actor's most used tool to get into your environment. And the great thing about this is it sounds like it's just for Office 365, but if you think about it, Office 365 constitutes all of your collaboration tools. So the same protections spread across SharePoint, Defender for, your collaboration tools like Teams. Let's move on to the next one, please.
Ian, sorry to interrupt you before we move on here, but very, very, I just need to call this out. Microsoft tools, right? We're a Microsoft partner. These are Microsoft tools. You know, Microsoft is the best in the business. That's not my opinion. That's what Forrester, that's what Gartner say. They you know, these are enterprise level security tools, you know, the tools that are going to ensure that that member trust is protected and you're going to continue to, you know, have your customers happy and trusting you with their business. So sorry, Ian, just needed to drop that in there real quick.
Oh, of course. Good points. All right, so the next one, vulnerability management. This is another great one. So it's a little trickier to figure out when your device is a few firmware updates behind, right? That could constitute a vulnerability. So not necessarily what, this ties into your attack surface area. So it's not necessarily what exposures, or like when you see these, it's not saying that there is somebody in your system, it's saying there's the potential for this to be leveraged to get access to your system. So vulnerability management is crucial for that part. It ties in with Defender for Endpoint, right? All of these products tie into a single pane at last in the end, like Sentinel. All of your telemetry goes back that way when you're using the XDR platform. And what this does is continuous asset discovery in terms of you add new devices to your inventory. You want to know if they're up to date on firmware or if you bought them from the manufacturer and it had an outdated firmware version by the time it got to you. These are the things that are kind of hard to keep track of and keep tabs on, but this is how you solve for that. Let's move to the next one, please. Defender for Cloud Apps. This is by far one of my favorite to play around with in the whole Defender ecosystem. If you look at Defender for Cloud Apps, it's super powerful in terms of onboarding all of your cloud, it gives you insight into and governance into all of your business applications that run. Any application that runs on any machine that has the Defender for Endpoint agent on it. Microsoft has a catalog of all of the applications they've ever seen on any machine with Defender for Endpoint ever across the world, and it gives them a risk score. So this is particularly helpful if you're trying to get SOC 2 compliance and you want to eradicate all of the applications in your environment that aren't compliant. This will tell you how to do that and give you a quick and handy button to go ahead and unsanction those apps so they cannot be used again. And it works on the DNS level too. So there's not a lot that users can do to get around it. It works very much like a DNS sinkhole, if you're familiar with that. It essentially recognizes we're trying to resolve to an IP address that is on the block list. So it sends that resolution to an IP not on your network and it goes nowhere. So it doesn't even load. Super helpful. All right, let's go to the next one. Attack surface reduction. I love this one too. This is a collection of rules that you can apply to your environment through Intune. And this is great for blocking common attack vectors. This is where you would do things such as restricting USB drive actions. And when I say actions, I don't mean, oh yeah, we can turn off USB access. No, this restricts what people can do with the USB drive. So they can maybe plug it in and read what's on it, but not copy it to the system to protect the integrity of their corporate device. Or you could say, hey, I don't want anyone being able to copy data from a corporate device onto a third-party storage device like a USB thumb drive and walk away with it. Attack surface reduction covers all of those facets. And I think it's really important, again, to say that all of this is included in your E5 licensing if you have it. You would not believe how many times we go into an environment and we realize how much a client has that they didn't know.
Awesome. Great tools, Ian. Love to see that and kind of talk through it. I think now we're going to kind of transition and talk about some of those use cases that exist
Yeah,
within
this
these
is the fun
tools.
stuff.
Yeah.
So here's where the rubber meets the road. We've talked about what all of these things can do, but how do you do it, right? This is the fun part for me. So use case one, we want to detect when a mass download happens by a single user. Now, I want to point out that might not be malicious in itself, but when you maybe chain it to, hey, they downloaded a bunch of files, renamed them, and then put them on a thumb drive, those three put together indicate malicious behavior. So we can get into the weeds and we can talk about all kinds of different ways to customize these. The first and foremost thing I want to show you is how customizable it is based off of, for example, an NCUA risk advisory or something. So what we're looking at here is 50 repeated attempts to download something within a minute, and it's on against the same target files or user. That way, it's not going to trigger a separate event every time something happens. It's going to tie them all together. And then what this does is, if you look at the boxes on the bottom, the little gray boxes, those are our filters. We want to filter the activity type equals downloads, right? So we want to trigger when someone downloads. We want to trigger when they download from a particular application. In this example, we chose Dynamics 365. Hit it, Beau. We can click on that and select from a list of any type of application that you have onboarded to your environment. You want to do this through Defender for Cloud Apps to get full insight and visibility. One example I have here is Salesforce. If you want alerts from when somebody tries to make something publicly accessible and it's a CRM record from within Salesforce, if you onboard that application to Defender for Cloud Apps, you can get that additional insight and governance into all of your line of business applications, not just the Microsoft stuff. I want to point that out here.
That's really, really cool stuff, Ian.
Thanks. Yeah. Microsoft does some cool stuff. And then if there's even more, if you look at the bottom here, we want to do it by if the address tag is not from Azure, and then the username is set to anybody. But the big thing here is how many different filters we can choose from, and you can keep adding line after line and customize them as you want.
It's great. Are there any other kind of behaviors we can detect with this?
Yeah, let's talk more about that USB one, right? Let's go to the next one. And so what this does is, by the way, all of these use cases are taken from different facets of the XDR solution. So the last one we just looked at was, I can't remember if it was a threat or an activity policy within Defender for Cloud Apps. This is going to be from within Intune, and it's an attack surface reduction example. And this is where we apply this policy to all of our devices in your corporate environment. We can make exclusions for C-level execs. We know how fussy they can be sometimes. But here's what we're looking at. Say you want to stop someone from copying data to a USB drive that's removable on their machine. You can see it's the second check box down here on this list. And on the right-hand side, there's a drop-down for audit only, block with override, and block. This is really interesting because auditing doesn't really tell the user that it's recorded what they've done. Block with override lets the user know, but it gives them the opportunity to override it, provided they give you a business justification. They have to fill out a little thing. And this is great because when you're rolling this out, oftentimes there's things that you're not going to account for that you might accidentally block, and we want those people to be able to get to where they want to go. For example, someone in marketing might need to be able to copy something to send it to a graphic design vendor that they're using. They want to be able to say, hey, actually, this is what I need to share, and give you that business justification so you can tweak and adjust your rules down the road. And something else I want to point out here, this goes back to the Microsoft ecosystem and how it all works together. There are third-party competitor applications or solutions out there. I don't want to name a whole lot, but there's file management, things like that would also accommodate this specific use case. However, they're not built into the Microsoft ecosystem, so you do have the overhead of an additional agent or something like that running in your sys tray, slowing your machine down. And on top of that, the telemetry that's coming across is not going to be as accurate because those systems are not integrated natively with Microsoft. So truly, this is why I think this is the best way to go about this. And again, cost optimization, Microsoft ain't the cheapest. That's why we go about deploying this smartly. Anyway, we're a little off topic here. Let's get back to the use case. These are the different kinds of things that we can stop people from doing based on attack surface reduction rules. Pretty powerful stuff, right?
It's awesome.
We've got more use cases. I love this one. Don't you love the names? Hakuna Matata, right? Or dot revenge. So what these are doing is these are indicators of ransomware existence in your environment. And the reason these are are indicative of ransomware is because ransomware doesn't want to entirely encrypt your whole system and brick your PC. They need to give you that ransom note somewhere, otherwise they don't collect. Remember, this is all monetarily driven. So the way ransomware works is they'll have a block list of files they don't encrypt and rename, such as system files, dynamic linked libraries, and things like that your computer needs to operate. So those are on a block list. What keeps the encryption software from constantly re-encrypting the data over and over and over, right? It appends a name, dot whatever, Hakuna Matatas, right? Or James or dot WannaCry. And then you put that on the block list, and it will not re-encrypt something with one of those extensions. So that's why we look for the block list to try and learn as much as we can. And anything showing up in that block list that's not a system file will immediately indicate presence of ransomware. So the next question I usually get asked is, how do I go about updating this anti-ransomware policy every time a new ransomware variant is detected in the wild? How do I find the new dot whatever and put it to this list? This integrates with the Microsoft Threat Intelligence connector. So I got this screenshot within the past week, and 2 weeks before that, Trump Locker and Trump Locker ERP were not there. So this is just an example of how it's constantly updating to keep your protection under wraps and protect your member trust. All right, that's it for use case 2. Let's go to 3. We talked about identity being the new battlefield. So here is an example of what a conditional access policy looks like under the hood. If you look at the screenshot on the right, we can see there's a name for it. We can select which applications that we want to apply this to. So what this is doing is forcing the user to have their device up to date and in compliance with all of the security and attack surface reduction rules and policies in place on it and functioning correctly. We want to have the user satisfy MFA before employ session controls before they can actually access that data. And again, this only applies if you look at this example to specific Power Automate apps. Again, you can add whatever applications in your environment here that you've onboarded to Defender for Cloud Apps, and you can apply these specific conditional access policies per application. This ties also back into how there's not a cookie cutter one size fits all approach that we can just slap on for everybody. We have to get to know you. We got to talk about what users are in what groups, what do they do, and then how we can keep them doing what they need to do, but prevent them from doing what they don't need to do. Let's go to the next one. Oh man, this is one of my favorites. It's by far the most unsung hero. It's very understated. This is your custom smart lockout, and it's included in any licensing for Entra ID. So if you have P1 licensing but not the rest, you can still use this. So what Smart Lockout does is it makes it virtually impossible, well, more impractical for a threat actor to brute force your network. The way brute force works is it picks an account and it constantly sprays passwords at it to see which one works. Given enough time, it's going to work. However, if you have to drop 60 seconds in between every 10 attempts, that's going to add years to how long that algorithm is going to take, depending on how long your password is. So this is a really efficient and easy way to squash brute force attacks to your environment without drastically impacting a user's experience. Somebody gets locked out, A, they need to call somebody if they're failing their password 10 times in a row, right? And then B, if they get locked out for 60 seconds, no big deal. It'll be back online before they can even get on the line with help desk most of the time. So this is a really efficient way to protect your networks, and it's included in any Entra ID solution, such as P1. Some other bells and whistles I want to talk about here too are custom banned password lists. So say you've identified that your environment has, or somebody in your environment has passwords leaked that are associated with what they use for their work password. It happens. You can put a list of known or compromised passwords in there to keep people from selecting the same password. So if password 123 showed up on the dark web one day, drop it in here. Nobody's ever going to be able to use that password when they reset their password again. Cool stuff. And then we have this set to audit mode because it's in our lab environment. Before turning this to enforced, if it's not already, I highly recommend running it on audit for a week or two and looking at what users are triggering it so you don't inadvertently cause some havoc. But like I said, it shouldn't really do much considering it only locks somebody out for 60 seconds after every 10 failed attempts. Super powerful, super simple, and included in Microsoft's Entra ID.
Great stuff, Ian. That's awesome to look at all those use cases. We want to launch a poll question really quick for everybody. So, Ian, we briefly touched on these use cases and what they can do. We want to know which ones are you, most interested in. Is there one of these that you would like to explore further? You can select multiple answers here. We could potentially send you a video recording, maybe connect for a demo, anything that you would like to learn more about. Please make that selection and we can make that happen. Give you guys another 20, 25 seconds here to get your poll responses in.
Yeah, just about any of these examples we have in the lab, we have like a demo set up in the lab ready to rock and roll, and we can customize use cases if there's something we didn't do here that you guys would be interested in seeing.
All righty. Okie dokie. Thank you, guys. We're almost there. We're almost done. We're on the home stretch. Please stay with us. Wanted to kind of just tie back into use cases that Ian just talked about, right? He talked the enterprise level security tools and the use cases. That's, the name of the webinar today is, protecting member trust with multi-layered security. So we just gave you a little bit of a taste of that multi-layers that we build in and how we go about protecting your member trust and protecting your organization. So once again, if there's any interest in learning more about those use cases, we will definitely be in touch. So we're on the home stretch here, guys. I promise. We just wanted to kind of wrap up here and talk about, we love working with credit unions at KMicro because we feel that our mission and values align very strongly with the mission and values that you have of providing a high trust situation and a level of service that is unmatched by the larger institutions. We really feel that we can relate to that and we approach our customers the same way that you guys do. And so there's a lot that we have in common, and just kind of continuing that security your way message. We've talked about it throughout the presentation, but I'll let Ian talk a little bit about some of these offers that we have and what they can do for your organization before we wrap up here.
Sorry, I got muted. Absolutely. Yeah. So as we mentioned, cookie cutter, one size fits all just isn't the right approach if we've learned anything in our time working with credit unions. So what we like to do is have a lot of these different buttons in front of you. MXDR is our gold standard. Say you get that call at 2 a.m. on Christmas. You don't want to deal with that. That's where somebody like myself or one of our other talented SOC team will hop in and troubleshoot, triage, resolve, and give you an update. For MDR, maybe you've got your own SOC and they're just a little overwhelmed with, they don't have the bandwidth to monitor the thousands of signals and telemetry coming in and out of your environment. So we can do the monitoring part and then just give you guys the alerts and say, hey, this is the one that we think, the big one that you should investigate. And a big benefit to that is, and maybe your team needs a little leveling up, we'll work with you. A rising tide lifts all boats, and this is a better together story we're trying to write. And then the VCISO, maybe you don't have, maybe you do have a SOC and they're monitoring, but you need help with keeping on top of roadmaps and making sure you're aligned with Microsoft as they're making changes to the way they do things going down the road. This is where having a Microsoft engineer in your pocket is really helpful to help you kind of get your environment up to best practices, get into compliance, and get prepared for the next road curveball that Microsoft's going to throw at you down the road. We've got a bunch of more stuff too. Maybe you just need some penetration testing or a little bit of advice deploying something. You name it. There is no cookie cutter approach. So whatever your issues are, give us a call. There's something we can do.
Absolutely. Love it, Ian. Thank you. This is our last slide, I promise. We're almost done. Ian, let's talk about Hackable, this book that we love.
I told you guys before, we're all nerds here. So this is a book that I read earlier this year. I actually received a copy from the author at RSAC back in San Francisco for it's a security conference. Loved it. It's not very technical, so it's a good read for everybody, but it talks about different strategies and solutions for coming up with like cost strategies for pen testing and other security practices that help identify them as less of a cost center and more of a differentiator. As you can see here, the things that everybody has to do just to be compliant, that's the table stakes. It's the things that you do outside of that that really set you apart. Being clear about your security strategy will help the buying conversations with your members. As 55% of them in an earlier slide see that as a differentiator. So why not capitalize on that? And that's what we're here to help. Special surprise, I guess, for everybody. You want to tell them, Beau, for those of them who made it to the last slide here?
Yes, yeah. Let me tie one last concept in, and then we'll launch that poll question. So just kind of in the same concept that Ian's talking about here, is security becoming a strategic investment. That leads to engagement, right? Trust and knowing that their assets are protected. That's going to lead to engagement. If you look up any customer experience research or studies, that when customers are happy, when they trust, when they know that things are going right, they're going to engage. And you want to know that your customers trust you. And then when they need a loan or they need to open a bank account, they know where they're going because they trust that you're not only going to provide fantastic value and fantastic relationships, but cybersecurity is not even something they're going to have to worry about because you've done your part in making that investment. So fantastic stuff. Yes, last poll question here, and then we will let you guys go. So going back to the book Hackable, we found this extremely valuable within our organization. And if you're interested in a complimentary copy, we'd love to know. So if you'd like a copy of Hackable, go ahead and hit yes, and we will get you that copy.
This is not the book it's not the book I'm working on. Maybe next year we'll have that one included here too.
We can all get autographed copies there. That would be good. All righty, give you guys just a couple more seconds to get your response in here. Okay.
Hey, we've got somebody that said they want the book, but they can't use the polls app. Is there a way around that, Beau?
Oh boy. Yes, we should be able to figure that out in the background.
Okay, great. We'll follow up. Thank you.
Yes, or ping me. If you don't hear from me, ping me, email bfreeman@KMicro.com. So ping me I think we should be able to figure it out on our end. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much. This has been fantastic. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being with us today. Watch for some follow-up emails with recording links. If you showed interest in the book, we will be reaching out to you guys. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend coming up and enjoy the holiday season. And if you ever need anything, we're here for you. Take care, everyone.